I know that recently I was actually thinking about the fact that I'm English and I've come to live in Northern Ireland. I've lived here for maybe 34 years now, and I've married someone from here. And I didn't realise how much the Troubles actually affected me, because I was kind of enclosed. I worked in television and we worked in sort of maybe the newsroom, maybe editing documentaries. But it was only when I went to Norwich afterwards that I began to realise that there was a silence in Norwich that was hard to cope with, because I'd been used to the noises of the Troubles in Northern Ireland.
And what year was that?
That was actually 1988 to 1989. We came back straight away. And I began to realise that my experience in Northern Ireland for the 4 years I'd worked in television was actually about someone's died, someone's funeral, someone's died, someone's funeral. Mm-hmm. And that we'd seen a couple of bombs going off from within the building I was worked. I'd see the plume outside. Mm-hmm. And you were worried about friends and family, you know, because you knew they might be in certain places.
Oh, there must be a hyper-vigilance.
Absolutely. And yet when we went to England, it was almost as though we'd betrayed everybody here and we had to go back. And it was only talking to a journalist more recently that I began to realise he was talking about post-traumatic stress, and how if he'd been asked today to go out and record a story, he would accept it and then find that he'd probably break down in tears because of that impact that was actually happening on. I mean, I know I've just kind of gone on a little bit, but it's just the experiences that I was having, and you don't realise how much that you are actually suffering from an unusual situation that's here.
I think we know so much more. The psychologists know so much more. The research is brand new, really. I mean, my understanding is this, you know, these issues have really only, our real thorough understanding of them is very recent, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's a different era. And, you know, that phrase people used to say of if the Northern Ireland Troubles have been worked out by different players in the peace processes, the decommissioning of arms, perhaps other places in the world, you know, because ours seem to be, well, I'm not a scholar of that, so I don't want to say too much.
I think it's interesting that
it hasn't worked out that way, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, the fear now with Brexit is that potentially we could end up with a scenario going back. I don't think that people want to go back to what they've experienced, so there is a kind of resistance to that. So hopefully that resilience of not wanting to go back to where we were will persevere. But Brexit is going to affect Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland far greater than any other part of the UK. I mean, with you're here in Southern Ireland and you've got experience elsewhere, and you've talked about China and you've come from Canada. Your experiences of the way that people from those places would look on this would be an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, it is very different for me. I mean, I did grow up in Canada from age 4, and then at 17 went to America, did the doctorate around this subject matter in Australia. So I was very distant from it, and it was interesting to come back and forth since my doctorate in 2007. But yes, here we are in Monaghan. It's a beautiful sunny day. The referendum on the abortion issue is happening today in Southern Ireland. Mm. It's a different climate. The terrorism issues are vastly different in the world in the last few years. So yeah, it's been a compelling piece. Now that things are so different I don't think, things have moved on so much, and yet there's entrenched, contested deaths, I think, are still in people's minds. I mean, it was what's become rewarding for me is the guest book, and who says what. I mean, the guest book is becoming a document in itself.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm also Rita Duffy is another artist who's well known in Northern Ireland and has been for years. I think she'd be quite a bit older than me, but she did a knitting piece to do with a soft border have you heard of that?
No, I haven't actually. That sounds interesting.
And even textiles, public art has just expanded so very much. I mean, the world is different because of our smartphones. I mean, I'm jumping around too much, but
well, no, but I think that's important because it's since, in many ways, since the Troubles have ended, a lot of that new technology that's now coming in, we weren't using not so much anyway. It wasn't as prevalent then, and I think we've there's a lot of good stuff because communication can open up, but I wonder if communication in the true sense of the word has opened up, or is it that we're showing too much of a facade of what we are as opposed to the reality of what's actually going on? And does that facade stop other people from really engaging in proper conversation because they're fearful of what may come out of their backstories?
Yeah, and we began this interview today, you're going to edit it and that kind of thing, but I was mentioning how people are doing FaceTime videos on their own, just uploading it in real time. There's the immediacy of seeing an incident of, terrorism or police violence or, what have you, and we didn't see those so much.
Yes, that's something I remember teaching when I started teaching secondary school students in FE. It was around about the time that there were lots of terrorism going on in Libya and Afghanistan, and there were beheadings, and a lot of those things were happening on I actually didn't want to see any of that. I didn't want to be. I felt if I watched any of that, it would kind of pollute my mind.
Well, triggered. Yeah. So they call it in post-traumatic stress. You're triggered.
Yeah, and I thought, because once you become desensitized, then it's very hard to go back to where you were, and yet the youngsters were quite happy to watch, and I was having to try and stop them from viewing stuff in the classroom.
So they've been desensitized in a different way than our generation.
But they also play in games. The games are becoming so realistic, where they see violence, and their character play in those games is to go out and actually kill and be aggressive. In fact, in many ways, a lot of the soldiers that are trained to fly drones are trained on games first before they go out. And I remember seeing an interview with a soldier talking about, he's in California, he's at home with his kids, they had a breakfast together, he goes into work, they may be in Afghanistan blowing things up, and then they'd have lunch, and then they'd be in Iraq, and then he began to start to process what he was really saying, because then he was going home to his kids, but he was playing a game.
So you mean from a remote location he could
kill people in those places?
From California you could...
Yeah. He was flying drones. In Afghanistan
I didn't realize that.
and in Iraq. Yeah.
He didn't even have to be...
He didn't have to be in that country. He had to dress up in his uniform. He had to wear the military uniform, but he was off-site.
To that distance. I thought you had to be at least closer.
No, and that is what is scary, is the technology allows us to remotely control things at such a distance but we also have that distance emotionally from what we've done. And I think it was only when he was asked that question and he started to process that information did he begin to realise, oh, hang on, there may be something wrong with this. Yeah,
well, you talk about the slowing down of time in that act of processing the information, which takes time and takes connection to your loved one, in his case his son and daughter, going home to the family and that kind of thing. I've always asked the Samaritans to come to my work in case someone is triggered, and if there's not a minister or priest in the vicinity, or if they've had a service with the memorial, or if it's in a more secular space, I feel it's important to have someone with counseling ability there. And what's happened with the Samaritans, I said, do people drop in person? Do they come and they call you? And they said, no, really, a lot of it is text. You can actually text someone through a suicidal predilection, out of, bring them out of that by text. And I think our generation, I'm saying I'm 50, wouldn't, that wouldn't be our first way of handling, a very serious, emotive internal conflict, would it? You know, you would feel, oh, I've got to see someone, I've got to touch someone, I've got to... And being in sculpture, I'm a kinetic person, I'm a kinetic learner. I approached this memorial not through needlework, but through, you know, I gained needlework knowledge along the way, and crafting knowledge and knowledge about textiles, which is wonderful. But I did approach it through space and architectonics. My father's an architect and sculpture. And the idea of earth art, and one of the things in earth art is always about slowing down time. And then the stitching, one name, it takes 1 hour. So that, you know, and that seems to be one of the ways we process trauma and emotions. Even, you know, love, if you think about it, it takes time to fall in love or connect with someone's heart, you know.
We have more on the way, so please subscribe to this channel and check out the link below if you'd consider becoming a patron to help us keep making more content. Thanks for watching.